Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This is My Old Computers, or whatever I called it, Part 3. We're now talking about the modern day. Well, I had a 286, a bunch of 386s, and that was about it. I was getting older at the time. I was still in high school, getting toward the end of high school, but not quite there yet. And my grandmother's brother, I think it was, something, had a computer that I could have. I guess he got it from his job or something. I don't know. It was a 486. This could run, I can't even tell you what it could run. Oh my God. This had, it was 50 megahertz, I think, in speed. It had 24 megabytes of RAM, I think. Odd number, I know, but that's what it was. I think I ended up with a 1 gigabyte hard drive. Could you imagine the luxury? Not terabyte, gigabyte. Like a 1 gig flash drive? Yeah, that's all it held. That's it. Everything would be on there. And that replaced the 386 SX machine. I had that in my senior year of high school. Oh, this brings up, this actually ties in with another old war story, which I'll tell another time. I had a bunch of electives to take in high school because I took all the serious stuff when I first got into high school, and then you have these electives or bullshit classes that you have to take to fill up the rest of your time there. I took oceanography. The teacher had delusions of grandeur. She was a high school oceanography teacher for years. They gave her a job, or maybe she was looking, and she was going to be teaching the 6th grade. Oceanography once again. We were high school kids. So she said, I want you to pick a topic and write a book. Not a book, but a book for 6th graders. A lot of pictures, some information about the plant or animal or something, and that's it. And then the next page would be something else and something else and something else. You could do this all on paper if you want. You can cut pictures out of magazines and paste them on. I said, well, the hell with all that. I'll do all of this on the computer. Well, it so turns out that this 486 and the powerhouse that it was, IBM PS2 model 95, was not really up to the task. We're going to leave that by the wayside because that's another old war story. But suffice it to say that by the time I was done with this, it was, I think, 54 pages. I had to use a word processor, Microsoft Word. I had to use an image editor program to copy and paste and crop images and stuff like that. And this had grown to such a size, such a document size, and the capabilities of this machine, that when I went to go and open the file to work on it the next day, it took 30 minutes. It did it, but it took 30 minutes for it to open and 25 minutes to save it. Any power outage during that time, I was fucked, because it would have been corrupt and that would have been the end. Yeah, I had a backup, but still. Anyway, my uncle heard the plight once again, and another package from Ricky Nilsson arrived. Well, at this point, I had VGA monitors. I had grown... I had amassed a collection of PS2 Model M keyboards, which is where I got my start with them. So I've been using them since high school, at least, which was back in like 93, about 1993, 94. I've been using them since then. So it's been a long time. Anyway, that's why I still use one today. They are unsurpassed and, in my opinion, one of the best keyboards in the world. To be surpassed only by that elusive Model F in my book. Anyways, a package from Ricky Nilsson arrived. This time it was a Dell. It was an Optiplex something P133. P133, you know what that means? Pentium processor? A Pentium? Holy shit! Now I'm in the big leagues. This was in 1995 or 1996. We'll say about 96. Yeah. About 96 or something. No? Yeah? Yeah, somewhere in there. Somewhere in there. Got this Dell hard drive, was 2, 3, 4 gigabytes maybe. I don't know. Big. Had 64 meg or even 128 meg of RAM. Oh yeah, this was the shit. No CD-ROM drive. Sound? Did it have sound? It had sound of some kind, some sort of sound card on board. That was a thing where sound was just built in. Got that machine. That replaced the 486, and then basically everything cascades down the line. So the best machines were out. And remember that even when I got this thing, this was old. His company was getting rid of it. They didn't want it anymore. And it was a Pentium 1, 133 megahertz. Oh, I could do anything with that. And that machine actually made an appearance in... Was it the computers in my basement or something? Old Throwback Thursday series of mine. It made a cameo in one of them. Sorry, I don't know which one and where. If I find it, I'll put the link in the description. Don't hold me to it. I don't know. But it was there. I had that thing. I had graduated high school at this point, I think. Yeah. I graduated high school in 97, so I had this from like 96 to 97. And I actually was able to run Windows 95. Now, a lot of you twerps out there are going to remember XP. Oh, we had that on our first computer. Yeah, no, I come from way back in the day. Before XP, the main players were 2000 to an extent, and 98 and 95 before then. And I had Windows 95. Ooh, this was something else. High-end stuff. There were some other computers along the time here that are not really worth mentioning because I didn't really have them. I put together a PC out of old parts that came from somewhere for my sister to take to college. It didn't do well. They were all like misfit parts, and none of them worked well to begin with, so the machine didn't work well. It had a sound card modem combo card in it. Pardon me. And that was given to me by my late father-in-law. I think that card was out of a Packard Bell. Just to give you the idea. But now I'm in the big leagues with Windows 95. Years too late. Because it already was out for 2 years. And a machine that could open that oceanography paper book, whatever it was, in like a minute, not even. My sister went away to college. Or no, she didn't go away to college yet. She was still at home and had that computer I made for her. Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry, she was already in college and then she went away. And then she took that machine with her, and we had a modem in this thing and dial-up AOL and all that, and man, it was a great time. It was a great time back in the day. And that was my first foray into, like, quote-unquote modern computers with, like, Windows and stuff. Well, we'll kind of skip ahead here. I was out of high school. I went into college, and I don't remember exactly what the deal was, but I kind of said to my dad, like, I'm going into college, and I need like a real computer now, because I'm going to be doing all sorts of like papers for all sorts of classes, and what's wrong with the machine you have now? You know, I got that line. Well, I mean, it's slow and outdated, and it's this and that. Screw you, fuck off and die, is all I got. So I was talking to his brother, another uncle, he's still around. And my uncle's like, no, there's no reason he shouldn't buy you a computer for college. There's no reason whatsoever. He's just being his normal cheap self. Do you have access to his credit card? I said, yeah. He said, go buy one. I said, but how can I already looked, and the machine I want is like $4,000. He's like, whether it's $4,000, $400, $40, or $4, he's going to yell the same. So just do it. And he was right. My dad yelled just the same. But that was the first computer I ever bought. And that I still have in my collection. Yes, it still works. Last I had turned it on was years ago. The hard drive is questionable, or was questionable then, so it may have died. I got spares, not worried about it. If I recall the specifications, it's Dell XPS R450, Pentium 2, 450 megahertz, the fastest available at the time. 128 megabytes of RAM. Not the maximum, but still plenty good for my purposes at the time. Turtle Beach Voyetra sound card. Ooh. Fancy stuff. Extended graphics card. Can't remember what it was. 19-inch Dell Trinitron monitor. It was a rebadged Sony, labeled Dell. Actually have a video of that at this very point in time I have not released. But I still have that monitor, and when I did test it within a year or so ago, it worked just as well as it always did. Man, that thing was so sharp, so nice, so good. That machine had a 17.1, yes, it was the thing, 17.1 gigabyte hard drive. It was a Maxtor, as a matter of fact. And yeah, like I said, it was questionable, but still working. The 19-inch monitor was a fortune. I also got an HP DeskJet 1000C or CSE. I can't remember. 1000C is close enough. That's a wide format inkjet printer. Did 600 by 600 DPI. I bought that specifically because of the higher DPI, not really knowing why I needed that or why I wanted that, and also not knowing that that was a wide format printer. It took bigger paper. That actually paid off in later years, as a matter of fact. It took up to 13 by 19 size paper, but I never used it for that, at least back at the time. The machine, the monitor, the printer, all told was like $4,000. And I had Windows 98. It was not 98 SE or second edition, it was first edition, because SE didn't exist yet. I went and told my uncle Ricky Nilsson, so to speak, that I got that. And he's like, what's the specs? And I told him. And he said, why didn't you wait for Pentium 3? It was just around the corner. But I had a great comeback for him, which was simply, if I waited for Pentium 3 and then told you what I got, you would have said, why didn't you wait for Pentium 4? That was the end of the story on that. I had that machine in college, and I used that machine to death. Oh, it also had, still has, a DVD-ROM drive. It could play DVD movies. We didn't have a DVD player in the house. This was high-end shit. And it required a separate card to be installed in the machine as part of that bundle, which was called a decoder card, because the processor, even being a Pentium 2, was not fast enough to decode the data from DVDs. So yeah, that was a thing. Switching gears for a second, the 133 megahertz Pentium 1 ended up going into my bedroom, and I also upgraded that, added an 8.4 gigabyte hard drive that my mother actually bought for me, and that was tons of storage. So then when I got this new Dell with 17, that was like more than double the size of that. When I got that 8.4, I was like, there is no way I will ever fill this. I filled it easily. Yeah, it went on. Anyway, this Dell 450 megahertz Pentium 2, I used the hell out of that in college, and man, it was a solid fucking performer. It did fail me early on. The DVD drive stopped working, but it was still under warranty from Dell. At the time, it was in-home service, and a guy came and replaced the drive right there at home for me. And it was all under warranty, didn't have to pay for any of it. So that was nice. I think the power supply one time got tripped up as well. I don't know if we had a power blip or something. It would not turn on. It was totally dead to the world. And after leaving it unplugged overnight, it magically started working again and has worked fine since. Okay. Used the hell out of that machine. Man, it was fucking solid. Oh, it was solid. I was sold on Dell. They were top of the line stuff. And this was pretty much as top of the line as you could get in that class back in the day. That was the one and only brand new computer that I bought that I didn't actually buy. And it was the one time that I had actual current modern stuff based on the capabilities and what was out at the time. The one and only time that I had that. Well, as the years went on, I started doing computer work for people, so I'd end up with their old computers and I'd fix them up. I'd find some thrown out. I'd fix those up. And I just amassed a whole collection of computers over the years. Got tons of parts, took parts out of machines that were not able to be fixed or were physically damaged or something like that. So I ended up with a lot of surplus parts. I knew people who had tons of surplus parts that they gave me. So then I had surplus parts and stuff like that. That machine, that Dell, I ran for years. My next door neighbor to my dad, when it comes back to that oceanography report, I needed to print that, but I didn't have this fancy inkjet printer. But he did, and he had a faster computer, and I asked him if I could print it there, because it needed to be in color. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I said, it's 50 pages and it's in color. He's like, so what? If you use up the ink, I'll buy new ones. He had money, but still, it was like, what, fucking really? Wow. So that was kind of my foray into modern day stuff. I actually ended up with that old machine. I don't have it anymore. It served a purpose for a while, but ended up not needing it anymore. It served a purpose for a while and then no longer did. So I got rid of it. The machine that I had in my room, which was that old 133 megahertz machine, I ended up with a 166 megahertz processor out of a friend's machine that died, so I upgraded it 33 megahertz. Yeah! It went a little faster. And it accepted that chip. I had to set jumpers on it to change it, and otherwise it still said 133 on the case, so I didn't have the case badge. That machine I no longer have either. But anyway, that was that. I used the hell out of that Dell Pentium 2 machine for about 6 years. For some reason, the copy of Windows 98 on that machine got very buggy and laggy. I don't know how to explain it, where you go to move the mouse around and the mouse pointer would jump to places on the screen. It wasn't a smooth movement anywhere you went. So you'd move, wait for the pointer to jump, and then if you moved it right, you could click on it and it would work. So I reloaded Windows a couple times on it, and it worked for a while, and it just, I don't know what it was, but there was something about it, and it got to be a bear to use. And at that point I was out of college, I was working, and it wasn't that big of a deal. There was no YouTube or any of that, so none of this stuff to worry about. My girlfriend at the time, now the wife, also had moved out back in 2002, and she needed a computer. Her brother gave her one that he built that ran for exactly 1 month and died irreparably. Even I couldn't fix it. The motherboard went bad. Don't ask questions. I didn't condone any of this. He built another machine for her, which was actually slower than the first. She ran that for, I don't know, 6 months. And she said, "Is there anything that can be done?" I said, "No, this thing is a turd." He knew it was a turd, but it's probably parts he had left over on hand, and that was the best he could build. "I need a good computer," she said. She was studying to be a nurse. She actually was a nurse already, but she's like, "I need a real computer." I said, "Yeah, I agree. What do you recommend?" I love that line. I've heard that so many times. And we went on to Dell's website, and I think we bought a machine for about $1,600. Still have all of the parts of that, all of the components to that. All of it still works as well to this day. All of the capacitors on the motherboard are blown or bulged, but yet the machine still functions. That was a Pentium 4 1.6 gigahertz something, 512 megabytes of RAM. Sounds about right. And it came with Windows XP. Yeah, a modern operating, that's old. It was modern then. I said, you know, they put this new activation bullshit into XP, and if you don't activate Windows within 30 days, then it'll stop working. But you can take a Windows XP disk and install it, and by doing that, I could run it for 30 days, not keep any data on the machine that I need. I had an external hard drive at this point. I said I could store all my data on there and reload it every 30 days. And it didn't take long to install the first time, so if it takes an hour every 30 days, big deal. And there weren't Windows updates to worry about much. There were just a couple at the time because the OS was brand new. You didn't have service packs to worry about, security, any of that, so you didn't have any of that crap. It was just a straight out-of-the-box install, and it worked. And I took this old Dell Pentium 2 machine that was on life support with a cane and everything, and I put in the Windows XP disk, and I loaded it, and it breathed new life into that machine. Was it as fast as the girlfriend's machine? No way. Was it tolerable for what I needed to do? Absolutely. It worked, and worked well. I would have still been using that machine, except for the fact that I was working at Tiny Middle. And at Tiny Middle, they ran a contest. The contest was to whoever sold the most number of extended warranties, and the prize was a Pentium 4 computer, 2.8 gigahertz, 512 mega RAM, 40 gigabyte hard drive. Wow. I won. I don't know how, but I won. And I took that machine home. It had a DVD drive already. I added an iOmega zip drive to it because I had one on the Dell Pentium 2, so I could still use that. I didn't end up using it much. The other drive in it was a CD burner, and it was high-end shit. And I would have kept using that old Pentium 2 if it weren't for my winning this machine, and I was back in the modern era once again at the time. And it came with XP. I actually upgraded it to Windows Media Center because I got a free copy of that. That was not a good idea. It was buggier, and I really couldn't take advantage of it. I got a TV tuner card for it, so that was there. And it worked under Windows XP. And times were great in the early 2000s. I eventually became a technician at Tiny Middle, and some lady brought in her Dell computer. It was pretty much identical to the machine that I had, except instead of 2.8 gigahertz, it was 3.4. It had enough memory in it. It had a bad hard drive. She didn't want it fixed. And she said, "Do you want this thing?" I said, "Sure." So I took it. And I still have it to this day. And still use it. It's in bad shape, but it works. And time has not progressed. There are other machines I've gotten, but that really brings us into the modern era. And that kind of wraps this series up. So with that, I thank you very kindly for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.